everybody. Good morning. Thank you, Tom, for the warm welcome. You know, there is a saying that rings true for all of us. You find your passion and you find your purpose. And I am delighted today to speak about a subject that I am very passionate about, which is inclusion, which may be a little bit different from some of the presentations that you've heard today. And it's a subject, indeed, that Microsoft is very passionate about. As a woman in leadership, and also a mother of a toddler, and a very tired one, I am grateful that I work within a culture which embraces ideas, everyone's ideas. And it's when more voices are heard that better decisions are made. But when we think about inclusion, you know, Microsoft is very much still on a journey. And that journey starts with reminding ourselves, you know, why inclusion is important. And that journey starts with you, with all of us. You know, we all possess identities which inform the work that we do. How does who you are impact how we see the world? Are there assumptions that you hold as truths? And how do those assumptions and biases potentially play out in our everyday lives? This, for me, is a beautiful illustration of what we mean by diversity. There are so many layers to it. Certainly, diversity goes beyond what the physical eye can see. And those layers are going to continually expand. Because let's just level set and think about the world that we live in today. Around 55% of London is multicultural, and it's estimated by around 2055, a third of England will be. Manchester, okay, home to over 200 languages spoken. And in fact, the percentage of lesbian and gay people is higher than the English national average. There are 1 billion people in the world that are living with a disability, both visible and invisible. That's around 14% of the world. So that's pretty staggering statistic. And in fact, in some countries, such as Australia, that's as high as around 40%. I'm going to double click a bit further into this. What else do we know? There's been a 100% increase in the number of black Africans in the UK in the last 10-year span. For Bangladeshis and Pakistanis, that's around 60% increase over the last 10 years. Interesting statistic. Immigrants, you are 3 times more likely as an immigrant to be entrepreneurial than British-born. What else do we know? Women, okay? It wasn't that long ago that women weren't considered to have viable careers, but actually, when we think about the impact of women, you know, women are estimated to have a discretionary income of around £20 trillion worldwide to the global economy. And they are certainly driving the bottom line for countless companies. The number of women-owned businesses has increased at twice the rate of all other new businesses. Finally, again, you're 28% less likely to be employed if you have a disability in the UK. And thinking about it, you know, the collective spending power of the disabled community is estimated at around 249 billion to the UK economy, known as the Purple Pound. Yet there are brands out there who still do not know how to accommodate for disabled customers. If a true representation of all ideas, people, and thinking were included in the workforce, you know, how different would our world look? To truly harness the power of diversity, we need to create inclusive cultures. You know, think about it. There's no point having all voices present, right, if there's no mechanism to allow those voices to be heard. You know, D&I isn't just something which we talk about and is important, you know, in pretty top level. It's something that we actively need to drive and activate. So this at Microsoft is the framework that we've anchored on to really bring our mission to life. Inclusive culture drives innovation to create inclusive products, and inclusive culture and products fuel our ability to execute on inclusive marketing. So let's start with culture. You know, I won't dwell too much into these statistics, right? But, you know, the more diverse our world becomes, it becomes even more critical to see and view your business through a diverse and inclusive lens. Some of these statistics here, it really does lead to mind-blowing shifts at what employees feel that they can do to come to work, to be their best selves, empower them to achieve more. But what does an inclusive culture look like? Right? How do we actually know that we're doing it day in, day out? I want to share with you at Microsoft, we've been very deliberate about this over the last sort of 5 or so years with our CEO, Satya Nadella. And at Microsoft Advertising, we were asking for guidance as a management community about how to really activate inclusion in our everydays. We worked with the Khalil Jameson company, a consultancy, to come up with 10 inclusive behaviors. Now, these are 10 actionable behaviors which have helped drive a cultural transformation within Microsoft. These have been game-changing for me as a manager because, I finally have the language to be able to articulate when inclusion is and isn't happening and really hold myself and my team accountable. Although these may seem commonsensical, let's say, I'd ask yourself to really challenge yourself whether you deliver on each and every one of these day in, day out, at home, at work, with clients, in a pitch, in a brief, for example. The results are pretty obvious. An organization which is more thoughtful of one another and which is empowered to achieve more. A couple of other things to think about when kickstarting an inclusive culture. Surround yourself with diversity, commonsensical, right? But really foster a culture of diversity through, kind of key principles. Create metaphorical and physical spaces of people of similar backgrounds to come together. Deliberately include so you don't accidentally exclude. And I think the key here is being intentional and deliberate about it. Seek diverse points of view. Work with vendors and partners and ask them to emulate your aspirations in the D&I space. And if you are a manager or indeed any leader within your businesses, I truly believe that in order for employees to feel comfortable coming to work and being themselves, you yourselves also need to connect with your employees on an appropriate personal level. Again, the results are pretty astounding, and it helped us develop a product like the one I'm about to show you, which is the Xbox Adaptive Controller. So the Xbox Adaptive Controller was actually born out of a Microsoft hackathon. Hackathons, essentially 23,500 employees and developers come together, experiment, brainstorm either ideas and bring them together. This hackathon team actually worked very closely with the accessibility community to try and understand the challenges that different able-bodied gamers have. And the result is this, okay? You see the Xbox controller in the bottom right-hand side. As you can see, it follows a similar aesthetic to the ordinary Xbox controller, but it has 2 very large pads here, so it's easy to activate and easy to engage. Tons of customizable functionality here. There's a large number of ports to be able to plug in external accessories, such as thumbsticks, triggers, external buttons, for example. And we didn't just stop there, right? What about the packaging as well? With a single pull of a loop tab, the package is able to activate and open from all 4 sides. And who wouldn't want any sort of packaging like that, right? The other thing to think about is when you design for one, you design for all. Studies have actually showed that the gaming community is an aging population, right? So dexterity and mobility are considerations for an older population. So as well as designing for the different able-bodied community, we were able to design for people who may have mobility issues as well. When we think about inclusive marketing, our CEO says that all our marketing should be inclusive and all our touch points should be inclusive. But what do we mean by touch points? The ad I'm about to show you actually for me really brings to life how a community of people were able to solve for their exclusion through a shared hobby, through a shared experience, which in this instance is gaming.
Rover. Sean. My name is Ian. I'm Taylor. My name is Owen, and I am 9.5 years old.
So Owen was born with a rare genetic disorder called Escobar syndrome.
He's had 33 surgeries to date.
I love video games, my friends, my family, and again video games.
It's his way of interacting with his friends when he can't physically otherwise do it.
What I like about the adaptive controller is now everyone can play. You can just say, all right, that's that button, that's that button, that's that button. Perfect.
One of the biggest fears early on is, how will Owen be viewed by the other kids?
He's not different when he plays.
No matter how your body is or how fast you are, you can play. It's a really good thing to have in this world.
Inclusive marketing, then, is defined by creating products, services, and experiences that reflect the vast communities and people that your brand serves. You know, to be able to tell relatable stories, it's really important that you show deep empathy and consideration with the community that you're trying to reach. I think it's about identifying how we exclude people from experiences, products, and services, and building products that include them. You know, it's not just a good cause, right? It's actually great for business. An example I wanted to show you was Fenty Beauty, Rihanna's Fenty Beauty, who recognized an exclusion and were able to innovate for big-time business impact. You know, prior to Fenty Beauty coming onto the market, you know, buying a foundation was ultimately a challenge for many people, with about 5 or 10 shades of foundation available over the counter. But what Fenty sought to do was actually design for all, and brought to market first 40 different shades and then 50 different shades of foundation, because they saw an exclusion as an opportunity. And the results were pretty astounding. First and foremost, you know, if we read this quote, I hope you can see it with the lighting, but, you know, from the founder, Rihanna, this prompted a deep emotional connection with customers who, for the first time, found that their exclusion, right, their issue was actually solved, and that meant something deeper and more profound to them, creating a very, very clear customer connection and affiliation with the brand. Fenty Beauty was really clever as well at using social media platforms to create an outlook for the authentic voice of the customer to come through as a true protagonist, coming up with campaigns such as the Friday Fenty Face-Off. And the results? 68 million euros earned in earned media value in the first month. 132 views of Fenty-related content on YouTube. I might ask for some audience participation here. In the first 40 days, then, what do we think of launching Fenty Beauty? How much revenue was generated? Anyone hit me?
100 million.
Not bad at all. Actually, that's around 89 million euros. If we interpreted that in dollars, we're not far off at all. I didn't put this in pounds because maybe it wouldn't look as impressive at the moment. However, what about in the first year of your launching Fenty Beauty, how much revenue was generated? So we've seen in the last first 40 days, what about the first year? Okay, I'll help you out with this one. $446 million. So euros. So what can we learn then from Fenty Beauty? Again, they saw exclusion as an opportunity, and really this should be the mechanism to create white space within any business. The voice of the customer, content was authentic and very much front of mind. Customers really cared about this inclusive product, really driving clear customer engagement. And the celebrity endorsement, again with Rihanna, was authentic, but not necessarily front of center, which allowed, again, the voice of the customer to be that key protagonist and really drive the brand forward. I want to share a couple more examples of what I think are great examples of inclusive marketing. So Tommy Hilfiger, who recently brought out their adaptive clothing range for both adults and children. They created clothing with, for example, magnetic closures, adjustable waist, one-handed zips, all of which didn't actually compromise, let's say, the integrity and the style of the brand. Another example in the UK is M&S, who created Easy Dressed kids wear, which actually shows that there are brands at both ends, let's say, the fashion spectrum, that are realizing that there is a community of customers who are there to be accommodated and catered for. Who else? River Island, right? They have been, spearheading their pro-diversity campaign over the last 12 to 18 months, using kind of the tagline, labels are for clothes. And their advertising, their marketing contains or, depicts models of all shapes, sizes, ethnicities, genders, and abilities, let's say. Well, so Kleenex, a bit of a different example, but a good one. They actually made a very deliberate effort of removing any language from their packaging, which excluded gender. As you can see here, Kleenex man size actually became Kleenex extra large. To Clothing, again, a really good example, who came to market with the 2 Summer of Love this summer. Okay, they, again, in all of their clothing range, their advertising, the marketing, the message and the call to action was to say yes to feeling good no matter what shape or size you are. Finally, women should be defined by their actions and not just by cliches, is the latest battle cry from the RAF. So the RAF were renowned for really advertising and marketing to a more male-orientated audience. But again, this is a very deliberate effort of the RAF to make sure that their marketing campaigns were very much inclusive. Again, a really good example I want to show you is Morrison's. So Morrison's actually implemented something called quiet hours in about 493 stores across the UK between the hours of 9 and 10. They did this because after surveying their customers, they realised that around 20% of their customers had a friend or a family member who suffered from autism or another, let's say, neurodivergent condition, which is often overlooked sort of in the D&I conversation. And also, even more poignantly, around 64% of customers with autism actually avoid the in-store experience completely. You know, this was a first really in the grocery market and really, really well received, you know, alike. And, you know, so much so, I think this is a really good example that reminds us that inclusion should be part of every stage of the business model, right? The in-store experience is the most tangible and visible way for a consumer to interact with a brand. Lots of statistics here. I just want to call out a few because, of course, you can read them. 25% of the most progressive ads are more likely to be effective. Why? Because they're relevant, right? They're enjoyable, they resonate, they mean something to the audience. And probably the final data point, 91% of millennials say they'd switch to a brand that is associated with a good, benevolent cause. I'd say also that statistic's as high as around 93 to 95% among mothers as well. My last example is Tony's Chocolonely. So next time you actually eat a chocolate bar, I want you to remember this. There are around 2.3 million children working in child slavery in the Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana. And whilst the major chocolatiers acknowledge this, there hasn't really been many deliberate efforts to address this and drive action. What Tony's Chocolonely did was actually create a shared value chain platform known as the Bean Tracker, which actually traces the journey from bean to a chocolate bar. And their aspiration is that traceability become the industry standard across the chocolate industry. Their aim is obviously to combat child slavery one chocolate bar at a time, and I've really called for other chocolatiers to join them on this journey. And they taste amazing as well, if anyone has experienced one. So bringing all that together, you know, what have we learned and what can I share with you about my view around inclusive marketing? The first one is, you know, a natural synergy. You know, making that synergy and that connection between the brand and the cause really, really obvious, and make that a natural extension of the brand's mission. Deep customer knowledge, you know, do your research. Stereotyping any community of people is the fastest way of showing them that we really do not understand them. Demonstrate authenticity, you know, lead by example, demonstrate worldwide commitment inside and out. I use the example of the Xbox controller, the adaptive controller, sorry. If you design for one, you design and you delight for all. And this isn't just limited to the products that you create, it also extends to campaign strategy. Finally, a benevolent brand attribute. You know, what part of your brand can serve a higher purpose, you know, and really make that a brand attribute. So hopefully I've told you or explained to you really how Microsoft thinks about our framework, how inclusive culture drives innovation to create inclusive products, and how inclusive products and inclusive culture fuel our ability to execute on inclusive marketing. Thank you very much.